The case of Don Decker, the man who made it rain on the other side of the world, in Pennsylvania, USA, during the winter of 1983, something quite unusual happened. Don Decker, a 21-year-old serving a light sentence in a local jail for theft, was granted a one-day leave on February 20th to attend his grandfather's funeral. This was a grandfather Don didn't appreciate at all. According to his own testimony, he'd suffered all sorts of abuse from him since he was 7. However, any opportunity to get out of jail, even for a few hours, was welcomed. That night, after the funeral, Don stayed at the home of his friends, Bob and Ginny Kiffer. As he was getting ready for dinner and washing up in the bathroom, he felt an inexplicable cold and believed he saw the image of an old man wearing a crown in the mirror. After this, he discovered deep scratches on his wrist, but all of this was just the beginning of a series of events as unsettling as they were inexplicable. Later that same night, the family heard a loud bang and saw water gushing from the house and falling to the floor. The drops seemed to sprout from the walls and ceiling without a visible source. Witnesses remember seeing puddles form out of nowhere and trickle down as if it were indoor rain. Perplexed, they called their landlord, Roaming White, who confirmed that there were no pipes there to explain this leakage. Faced with such a strange phenomenon, the Kiffers called local police, but contrary to what usually happens in horror movies, when the officers arrived at the house, the phenomena didn't disappear. On the contrary, they began to intensify. Patrolman Richard Wolbert entered accompanied by Don, and according to his account, he hadn't taken the steps inside the house when he was drenched by completely inexplicable indoor rain. The officer described drops that seemed to travel horizontally, hitting him in the chest and defying gravity. His partner, Officer John Baum, admitted that he felt a chill down his spine upon entering and seeing something so unusual. Astonished, the police evacuated Don and the Kiffers to report to their superiors. Surprisingly, when Don and the Kiffers left the house, the rain stopped abruptly. After that event, Don and the Kiffers went to a nearby pizzeria to try to calm down, but surprisingly, inside the pizzeria, the phenomenon repeated itself. Out of nowhere, hundreds and hundreds of drops began to fall inside the establishment. The pizzeria owner, Pem Crofano, watched in horror as it happened and, frightened, pulled out a crucifix and brought it close to Don, who remained still, gazing blankly as if in a trance. As soon as the metal touched his skin, Don screamed that his hand was burning. It was this reaction that confirmed to Pam that Don was possessed by something. Back at the house, the manifestations only worsened. The Kiffers said that pots in the kitchen began to rattle on their own, and suddenly Don levitated a few inches before being violently thrown against a wall. At the same time, more scratches appeared on his arm, and this time in the shape of a cross. Faced with all this, the family sought spiritual help. A pastor who was a friend of the family, named Justina Hull, prayed with Don for over an hour, and when the prayer ended, the mysterious rain stopped. When his leave concluded and Don returned to jail, things actually took an even more unsettling turn. Several guards reported that water was gushing from the floor of his cell and rising up the walls, even flying sideways on one occasion. Supervisor David Kinghold wanted to check if all this was real and challenged Don with a test, "Make it rain in my office." As soon as the challenge was issued, a drop suddenly appeared and hit him directly in the chest, soaking his uniform. Convinced that it wasn't just a simple pipe malfunction, Kinghold called the prison chaplain, Reverend William Blackburn, convinced that it had a supernatural origin. Hereas the Reverend's testimony about this case, I entered the cell, and the first thing I felt was the smell of death, a stench 5 times stronger than a hospital room full of agony. I remember opening the Bible and reading passages aloud. The pages didn't get wet, the water fell around, but not on the Bible. That's when I understood this was something satanic. Then, after praying briefly, the phenomenon stopped. Reviewing his account, Blackburn added that Don began to cry and ask for forgiveness. The encounter ended without further rain incidents, and since then, this strange phenomenon has never been recorded again inside the jail. The case of Don Decker became famous during the 80s. Some paranormal witnesses speak of demonic possession or even a psychic power that allowed Don to materialize rain out of nowhere. However, skeptics like investigator Robert Bartholomew advocate for more earthly explanations. In his opinion, extreme stress, and collective suggestion would have altered the perception of all witnesses. He even proposed a technical cause, an internal winter thaw on the roof, meaning an ice dam after heavy snowfall that could have leaked water inside the house. Whether by a supernatural power or by collective hysteria, the case of Dawn Decker continues to intrigue more than 40 years later. The Hollingwell incident on the morning of July 13, 1980, a charity parade of youth bands was set to take place at Hollingwell Field in Nottinghamshire, England. With about 500 children from 11 bands participating, no one imagined they were about to witness a strange event that would go down in history as one of the country's great mysteries. Around 10:30 am, a small group of children preparing to play with their bands began to suddenly collapse. Witnesses were horrified to see them fall without reason. In a matter of minutes, the grassy field looked like a battlefield full of bodies. In the words of one of the police officers who attended the scene, the affected children showed strange and very varied symptoms. Many vomited, others complained of intense dizziness, muscle weakness, and headaches. Some had nausea, stomach cramps, and a tingling or numbness sensation in their limbs. Watery eyes and irritated throats were also common. One of the girls, Susan Rook, 13, described her symptoms as follows: "I felt like my legs and arms had no bones, and I had a severe headache." Another child, Carrie Elliott, 10, recounted, "I got weak, my stomach hurt, and then I fainted." Everyone was falling, and some were crying. Among the victims were not only children from the bands but also around 15 adults and even two babies, plus two horses that fell ill with the same symptoms in the following days. In total, over 200 children and several adults collapsed in 2 hours, and 259 people had to be treated by dozens of ambulances in nearby hospitals. The commotion sparked a rapid investigation. Soon, rumors and theories arose among those present. Some believed it was food or water poisoning. It was even suggested that it could be due to candy, more specifically, some poisoned gummies, which spread panic among the children. Food and water samples were collected from the festival stalls, but the analyses were negative. No bacteria or toxins appeared in the tests, and in the end, the vendors, who for days suffered complaints from neighbors, were exonerated. The media speculated with the theory of an invisible toxic gas. The Daily Mirror, for example, ran a headline the next day that read, "Gas cloud fells children," despite nothing being proven. Soon, the phenomenon was linked to pesticides. It was recalled that days earlier, a nearby field had been sprayed with an insecticide called Calixin, which contains trimorph, a substance now banned. The idea that the wind had carried poisonous particles to the field was considered. However, local firefighters confirmed that the wind was blowing in the opposite direction from Hollingwell that day and found no traces of any toxic cloud. Hospital doctors noted that the symptoms were compatible with exposure to irritating vapors but could not identify any specific substance. Another hypothesis would postulate that ammonia and bleach-based cleaners were used in portable toilets, producing chlorine gas when mixed, which could also cause similar symptoms of burning eyes, coughing, and nausea. In several medical reports of the time, it was said that the symptoms fit documented cases of mass hysteria. This hypothesis suggests that the children were very tense due to the competition and had been in the sun and standing for a long time, so when a few fainted, the others reacted in a chain. However, many parents and witnesses were dissatisfied with that explanation, as this hypothesis crumbles when we remember that even some babies and two horses were affected by the same symptoms. Terry Bingham, one of the parents, declared, "We never got a proper answer and the authorities brushed us aside." To this day, this case remains shrouded in unknowns. The official investigation never reopened, and the local council ruled out revisiting the matter. After more than 40 years, the Hollingwell incident remains unresolved, leaving the door open to all sorts of suppositions. The disappearance of Antoinette Christine Caidito, 9, was a Navajo girl living in Gallup, New Mexico, with her mother, Teresa Penny Caidito, and her sisters, Wendy and Sadie. On the night of April 5, 1986, she was getting ready for bed when her mother returned from a meeting just after midnight. Antoinette was wearing a pink nightgown and settled into her bed. Penny last saw her asleep around 3 am. The stillness was broken by a knock at the door. Wendy, Antoinette's sister, would recall years later hearing a man's voice claiming to be Uncle Joe, asking them to open up. When Antoinette opened the door, the man immediately grabbed her. The girl struggled and screamed, but it was useless. They roughly dragged her to a brown van that started its engine and sped away. In just a few seconds, the strangers disappeared, taking Antoinette with them. At dawn, Penny woke up as usual at 7 a.m. and noticed something terrible. Antoinette's bed was empty. She began asking from house to house for her daughter but got the same answer: no one had seen her. Wendy, who was then 5 years old, wouldn't tell what she had seen the night before until 5 years after her sister's kidnapping. As she would later declare, after those men took her, she went back to bed without saying anything, fearing she would get into trouble for what had just happened. She believed that somehow she would be blamed for opening the door. Desperate, Antoinette's mother called the police that same morning. An immediate search was organized. Volunteer neighbors and authorities scoured the nearby hills and canyons and forests for vehicles, on motorcycles, and even on horseback. Tracking dogs also arrived, but none could follow the girl's trail. No clothing or belongings were found outside the premises, nor any signs of struggle at the door. A year passed with no news until, at noon on April 12, 1987, something unsettling happened. The Gallup police station received a call in which a girl's voice was heard, claiming to be Antoinette and stating she was in Albuquerque. Before she could say more, an adult male voice interrupted, yelling, "Who told you could use the phone?" Then the girl's screams were heard before the line went dead. Agents recorded 40 seconds of the call. Penny listened to the recording several times and affirmed, heartbroken, that it was indeed her daughter's voice. Despite this, the origin of the call could not be traced. Later, another possible clue emerged. In Carson City, Nevada, a waitress reported serving a couple with a very thin teenage girl who, while eating at a restaurant, intentionally dropped utensils on the floor repeatedly. When clearing the girl's plate from the table, the waitress noticed that underneath there was a folded napkin with the handwritten messages that read, "Help me and call the police." But by the time the waitress picked up the plate, the couple and the girl had already left. As the years passed, disturbing rumors also emerged about Penny, the mother. It was said that she had failed a polygraph test and given contradictory statements to investigators. Although no formal charges were ever filed against her, these speculations fueled suspicions in some. But others believed in the mother's innocence and pointed out that she was visibly devastated by her daughter's disappearance. In their desperation, the family even resorted to a traditional Navajo healer. According to them, the woman performed rituals with crystals and assured them that Antoinette was still alive. The healer also claimed that the girl was being held against her will somewhere in the southwestern United States under threats of violence. The truth is that despite the investigations and the years that have passed, Antoinette, under hypnosis, Spencer described how he became paralyzed and floated inside the craft where a voice told him to calm down. Then, a group of green beings identical to the one he had photographed performed medical examinations on him, inserting instruments through his nose and mouth. He narrated an intense sensory experience, saying he was shown a video of catastrophes such as nuclear explosions, famine, and floods. Then they showed him other images of which he refused to speak, stating that the aliens don't want humans to know. He stated that he was returned to the mirror just before he took the famous photograph. According to investigator Nick Redfern, just a few days after the encounter on Ilkley Moor, Spencer received a visit from agents linked to the British Ministry of Defence. An official file was opened on his case, and subsequently, two men in black suits arrived at his home, supposedly to pressure and dissuade him from speaking publicly about what had happened. Redfern recounts that these individuals acted with stealth and subtle intimidation. They were seen photographing the exterior of the house and asking about Spencer indirectly, without clearly identifying themselves. Furthermore, it is known that various British agencies interrogated Spencer in the following weeks, which gave institutional backing to the case. This wasn't an isolated anecdote but a fact that caught the attention of official bodies. The story of the Ilkley Moor encounter quickly became public. For UFO enthusiasts, the case represented a remarkable breakthrough, an image that, although blurry, was seen by many as one of the best pieces of evidence of alien life ever captured in the United Kingdom.